Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm Sammy, your host, and today we're talking about how to create video for your live online virtual fundraising event. So pre-recorded versus recorded versus just some different things to think about when it comes to the production of your event and how it all comes together. And to do that, I'm joined by Michelle Alvarado of Wahoo Films. It's rare that someone finds their passion at such a young age and follows it doggedly, unwilling to be diverted by adolescent whims. But just like her images, Michelle stayed focused. She went to USC Cinema and landed jobs at National Geographic, Monterey Bay Aquarium, and Showtime. In 2005, Michelle founded Wahoo Films to help organizations better connect with their audience. Her genuine passion for her customers is evident in the video marketing campaigns she produces for them to create a positive impact for our environment and communities. This is a super fun and engaging conversation and just a different way to think about how you run your event, right? We don't want to just duplicate our gala online. That's not going to be something that converts well or engages well. And then just a fun, different way to think about how we create video for our events and how we repurpose that video as we go. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I think you'll really enjoy it. And I would love to hear from you how you're using video to promote your event, during your event, and to follow up with your donors after the event has happened. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our online fundraising virtual summit. So this kicks off on Monday, you guys, May 17th. It's a free 5-day event. Michelle will be there speaking about how you can use your video to promote your event and fill up your seats. But it's a 5-day event all geared towards helping you set up, fill up, and follow up from your online fundraising virtual event. So I hope you'll join us. It all kicks off May 17th. You can head on over to onlinefundraisingsummit.com to get your free ticket, share it with all your friends. It is jam-packed with live Q&As, live panels, and pre-recorded sessions to kind of keep you guys moving forward at whatever level you're at with your online fundraising event. Okay, so again, onlinefundraisingsummit.com. I hope you'll check it out, and I look forward to seeing you there. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hey everyone, please join me in welcoming Michelle Alvarado from Wahoo Films. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk about video and live events because I think it's something that people get nervous about and stressed out about, and the tech overwhelms them. So I think you're going to do a great job at kind of calming their nerves. But before we kind of jump into those topics, how did you start creating some of these amazing video pieces and get involved in video production for nonprofits?
Yeah. Well, as a young lady, around 13, I swam and snorkeled a lot. And I was lucky enough to have somebody let me use their underwater camera. And then I edited the video together. And it just felt really natural for me. And then I started doing it for my school, high school, and it just really, I saw it like bring people together, but I was always enjoyed watching documentaries, especially about wildlife, and the power that video has to move people, to take them places. It just really, it just captured me. And I love the technology and painting a picture with a camera and sound and music and, the emotions you can bring. So it's a very dynamic medium, and it just connected with me.
Well, and I have to say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as far as the nonprofits, I mean, having that passion for nature and people just was a really good connection to be working with nonprofits.
No, that's so good. And I always have to say, whenever I work with a video production team or a videographer or cinematographer, whatever the title might be, right? I'm always so impressed because I don't have the skill set to see the whole thing come together. You're doing all these like bits and pieces. but just that ability to kind of see the whole story as you're shooting and then the final product is incredible to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's really fun to visualize stories and really to tell them visually, right? That's really quite fun to do. So,
yeah. And you were doing that before video was the thing.
Yeah. It was all tapes and old big giant cameras. And so I've been doing it a long time. And I feel fortunate that now you can put stuff online and anyone from anywhere can see it and learn about your organization. So it's really exciting medium, but it's also a very busy medium. There's a lot of information out there. So now our real focus is how do you swerve enough to really catch people's attention with the stories and content you're telling. And also, potentially how do you have to put some money behind it, or, what are some tricks you can do to rise above?
Yeah, for sure. It is a noisy world out there.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about online events and how, you can really make them impactful and engaging and less stressful for your team. And one of the ways is to not do everything live. And some people might say, well, that's crazy. Like, if we're not doing it live, how are we engaging? And I know that you have some great thoughts behind how to incorporate kind of that combination of live and pre-recorded. What's a great way for people to kind of start thinking about that process?
Yeah. So whenever you run a live event, the technology is certainly, you're kind of at the whim of it, right? And when you have internet issues on either side, either somebody speaking or somebody streaming out, it can get pretty nerve-wracking. And so having the opportunity to record as much as you can is always a good approach. Obviously, there's some things that need to be live, but if it can be recorded and you can do it in a way that feels live, if you want to, then that will help reduce the amount of technical issues you'll have in your event. And so I usually say, start out by laying out a run of show and really looking at it and seeing, what could we do recorded, and then where do we need to run it live to start.
Well, I used to run a big gala for a previous employer. And one of my shining moments was when we did our it was like a 2-hour event with, live auction and all of that. And we ended our run of show 2 minutes late, 2 minutes. And I was so proud of myself for that. Because one of the other things is, you have board members that are speaking or advocates that are speaking, and you can't control, if it's recorded, then you can control that timing and make sure that everything still stays on track as well.
Right. Yeah, that does help. I would say in shifting from a live event for in-person event to a live stream event, you would want to have a shorter event because there isn't as much movement, or they're not eating, or, there's sort of, so having a bit of a shorter event would also be a good start. And you do get a little more control on that as well, on the length.
So when it comes to technology, I'd love it if maybe you could share, if we're gearing up to hiring a production company, which is ultimately going to reduce the most amount of stress. What are some ways when it gets started that you can kind of manage that run of show if you don't have a strong tech background?
Yeah, definitely partnering with somebody is helpful in the production group. If you do, not all video productions do run live virtual events, online events. So I would say definitely bring them in early, and then determine what kind of show you want. So do you want an auction? That would influence obviously what software you're going to use, as well as the flow of the show. Do you want to have a Q&A? Give us a main speaker, and then you want to have a question and answer at the end. That would be so. Yeah. So I think really determining what is your goal and what kind of show do you want to have, and who's your audience. So,
okay. So then when it comes to planning for your event, Like how far in advance, when you're working with clients, like how far in advance are you building out that run of show so that you can then pre-record that content to get everything ready? And then kind of the next phase of that, which I know you're very passionate about, then being able to use that pre-recorded content to promote your event before it even starts.
Right. Bingo. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, ideally, if you could start 4 months ahead of time would be a great number, depending on the complexity and size of your show and how many people are involved. That would be a minimum. We have run shows in 2 months and
and everyone's going
wild,
crazy.
And it's crazy. And you don't have as much time you don't have as much material to promote it, which I think is really valuable. So I would say, if you could have 4 months to start planning your run a show, then the materials you create for the show can be repurposed into little teasers that can then promote people to sign up and get them going. And and we love also being involved in the emails that go out, or you may even, if you send out a printout, having some of the materials in there, some of the visuals can really grab people and get them excited about attending your event. So
yeah, I mean, I think if you're doing printed things with QR codes, it's so easy now that people don't have to have apps to open them. And if it pops up in a video right away, that's super engaging from the
that's
onset.
A great idea. Yeah, so we took some of the presentations that were going to be in this recent fundraising event we did, and we just pulled out 15-second snippets to encourage signups, and we did about 5 different videos for it, and that got a lot of engagement and interest. So on social media, and then they also used it on email. So yeah.
So then when it comes to, so you touched a little bit on, obviously, like a 2-hour gala is going to be different than an online event because of the, social interaction, eating food, yada, yada, yada. So do you have any recommendations for folks when it comes to kind of little snippets and video pieces, how long they should be in order to keep people engaged with the movement of the event?
Yeah, that would be another thing that would be different from an in-person event is you want things a bit shorter, we would suggest, and move them along. So, everyone's taste is different. Our recommendation is you have some sort of high energy short segments and then potentially a longer reflective segment, potentially perhaps while you want them to work on picking items from the auction or a paddle raise. But the best shows I feel that we've been involved with are the ones that have short video snippets, let's say 30 seconds to a minute, that highlight different aspects of the organization, what they do, and then they're just sort of peppered through the show. So, for example, one might talk about the kids' involvement and how they bring kids out to grow in some way, and it's about the 1 minute, and then you have maybe the board of directors share a poem or something like that, and then the auctioneer comes on and asks for some fundraising effort, and then they show another 1 minute video about the environmental impact that they're having on the community. And then maybe it's you go to a performer for a little bit, so spreading out the value of your organization in little different pieces throughout the video, the event. And I feel like those hit people in different ways and just really help to really show your value, but not all in one 5-minute video like we used to do. Now it's a little more spread out. And I would recommend the segments be shorter, maybe 30 seconds to 3 minutes before you change up, kind of like a TV show or news show thing where things change a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said about how each little snippet is maybe hitting different people in a different way, because when you're in a big live in-person event, you might have people that are there for various reasons, right? They might be there because they really care. They might be a table host, and they might have dragged some people along that have no idea about what your organization is. So by having some of those short little snippets, you're kind of maybe hitting people where they are, so that then you can continue to do that follow-up afterwards.
Yeah. That's a great point, that you have sometimes some new people with you. And so, yeah, not assuming they already know all the great things about you. And I felt like spreading it out a little bit too. It just was like, oh, they do this and they do this. And it just kind of built it up throughout the whole show. And also on an auction, it sort of inspired different reasons for paddle raising.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So if we are a new organization, or not a new organization, but we're new to doing this online thing, we're finally doing video production for the first time, do you feel like, even if it's just getting started with your team that you have and like a iPhone camera that people are just kind of starting to create is okay? I mean, they don't have to go straight to full on production immediately, right? It's just a matter of capturing the right stories.
Yeah. Yes. I think it depends on what part it is. So, if you're taking people to a place and you want to highlight a place, then having some quality behind it does help, working with a production company. But if, like, for example, we encouraged all the board members to come on and say a message. So recite a poem is what they came up with. And that worked just fine as a Zoom meeting. But, the audio was all over the place and the quality was sort of, but it was okay because people understood, we need to do, it's online, people can't come all to a single place. And we got to meet all the board members through this sort of creative effort. So I think, audio tends to be the biggest problem people have when with Zoom or with, using their own phone. And so that's probably where it gets tricky. So, doing it in a room where there's no wind or no distractions, that kind of stuff can really work well. So yes, I think so. What we tend to do is we partner with the nonprofit and we say, okay, this part we'll take care of and you take care of this part, just to try to keep it to be cost effective for them. And we've even lent out our mics and helped in that way just to help that along. Because ultimately we want to see them make money and not put it all in the event, right? So so I think some things you can do on your own. Some things are worth getting somebody professional to do it.
Well, and I feel like too, when you work with a professional company, you end up with more content than you need for the event, which can then lead to more content that you can use later on, right?
Yeah. And we've talked about this where, actually asking for additional donations afterwards is really effective. And you can use some of that content for a follow-up afterwards. People who maybe were just busy at that time and, or something came up, right? Or, so you can still grab some of that audience or people who had to sleep on it, right?
Right.
And you can use it for like later down the line when, maybe around the holidays or, so that's one great thing about online shows now, because they are so video heavy, you can actually take a lot of that material and use it later on in the year.
Well, I think because most people aren't really charging for the online ticket, or they're charging much less than they would for like a dinner, because you're not having to pay for the ballroom and you're not having to pay for the meal, right? So if you're not charging as much for the ticket, you don't feel as bad about repurposing that content and using it again. Like, it should be exclusive to the people that paid to be there to see it. And so I think everything that the investment you make in creating high quality video can be used over multiple times over the course of the year.
Yeah. And, and we will find creative ways to make it look a little different, and people's memories aren't right. They're not going to remember it so well that if you change it up a little bit, new music, maybe different order, then it feels new again. So it's really, how do you maximize all this effort you're putting in and reuse it as much as you can. But kind of creatively come up with some new ways. I do want to just say really quick that, technology is it can be, there are a lot of choices out there, different software platforms you can use. They've come a long way this year. Obviously, there's so much more demand that I mean, we're so grateful that they're much more there. If you've heard a few horror stories, it's very likely that those things have been fixed because there's been so much money being thrown into the running these online events. So, but yeah, I think any partner you work with can help give some ideas. But there are a lot of software choices out there, and so, but the ones we've been working with lately have been pretty turnkey. But it does depend on what kind of event you want. So
yeah, I think that's really critically important. If you start down the tech rabbit hole first, you're going to get overwhelmed, as opposed to just saying, okay, we want our event to look like this. This is what we're going to do. And I'm curious because, one of the things that got brought up last week in our podcast episode with Daryl Hatton was, if you just take your existing event and try to duplicate it online, that experience doesn't really translate. And so you do kind of need to rethink so it might just be that it's replacing your gala, or it's replacing your run walk or whatever. But, have you seen any creative ways that organizations have maybe tweaked and refined some of their events that they've had to then just take online?
Well, I think what's really exciting about online events is you can really bring in people from anywhere. And we've had a few events that have brought in artists or speakers from other areas outside that really have something to add that couldn't have come to the live event. So you really get to expand your thinking. We had a live piano out in the desert playing outside. That was pretty neat. Yeah, pretty unique. We did one for where we had the camera with the fox, with the gray fox, and that type of thing you wouldn't be able to see. So it is neat because now you're not limited to your community. So, and that goes also for your donor opportunity too, is now you have an opportunity to reach out to people outside, which is, will take some time to grow and develop. But, I know where I live, there's people who love to visit here. And so that's a potential list you could connect with.
For sure. Well, and I'm in Phoenix as we're recording this. And so I'm also thinking I used to live down here when I was doing fundraising special events, and we jam-packed them all into like a 5-month period because that's when people were here. And now everybody's getting ready to leave for the summer. And so what does that do for opening up the opportunities to host a summer event online when you're not quite as crazy with everything else in your live in-person things, and still be able to include your regular donors? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of talk going on right now about hybrid events as things are opening up. So maybe that's a future podcast.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, hybrid events are. Oh, yeah. Well,
and two shows. Basically.
They're 2 shows. I know. I think about that with teachers right now, and the poor teachers that are having to teach in person and still provide the online experience for those students. And it's just like, that's what the hybrid, anyway, but it's incredible. And I think an opportunity to be able, like you said, to build on your base and continue to grow outside of your network. Because speaking of schools, like my kids used to go to a private school, and their grandparents would happily give money to the school. They're never going to attend an event in person because they don't live in the same location we are. But if there was a hybrid opportunity and we, said, hey, grandparents, could you join and learn more about the school your grandkids are going to? They might be able to get a bigger gift from them. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I would also say that maybe one shift from in-person, because part of in-person is mingling too, right? And so one, you could consider like breakouts to have people mingle. There is software that allows you to do that. You have to think about how you can creatively have a reason for them to mingle, but there's that idea. And then the online event is a different type of event. So I will say that in the attendance that we've seen the best is typically somebody who draws people to your event. So, before it may be more, it is still about your cause and the value of supporting organization. But I will say with an online event, if you want, especially want to get new people, having a speaker or a musician or something that's a bit of a headline, that has had pretty significant impacts that sometimes cost money. So I understand that's not always easy, but just something to consider is if you want to really have the opportunity to draw people. And because it's you can grab somebody from anywhere,
right?
That expands your connections. If someone has it connected to somebody famous or somebody, that can really draw a lot of people.
Well, and to that end, that's another beauty of being able to have a pre-recorded piece, because it is virtual. So it's not like a video of somebody playing on a stage where the audience is live, right? People won't necessarily see the difference if that is recorded and done right. They don't even have to necessarily show up live at that time, which also opens up more opportunity to engage and bring in people in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Yes. And even if they're at a distance, having them record it on their own, or even recording, even if it's going to be on Zoom, we still recorded as much as we possibly could, with some tricks to make it feel live, which I'll talk about in the summit that's coming up. And so now I'm realizing I'm dating it.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that is, recording that ahead of time would be really, really valuable. So.
Yeah, because I used to work for Boys and Girls Club, and I know that was one of the things was like bringing in alumni that have been really successful. And a lot of times they wanted to come speak at our events, but, due to scheduling, they couldn't. So, you kind of pack that 1-2 punch of like, here's an alumni that's come through our program. Look at how well they're doing. Plus there's somebody famous that people will want to see. So I think that's a really brilliant idea. And kind of having that keynote speaker.
Yeah. And that's where, planning ahead of time, before maybe even 5 months ahead of time, is because you can do a lot of it pre-recorded. Being able to have that time to get people making their videos, making sure they're going to work, and whatnot. Sometimes people have stuff already recorded that they can share and put in the show. That does help a lot and makes it easier for us, and they can do it on their own schedule. So all of those things really help to make an event more. In fact, we recently had one that was fully recorded, and it just ran as a YouTube premiere. So premiere would make it seem like it was a live show, but it was all pre-recorded, and it went out. It was perfect. No technical issues or anything. And it's actually more affordable too, because you don't have to have a live crew switching between everything, the live person and the pre-recorded and the slides. And
And then was their team just live in the chat during that time?
Yep. Yeah. They had the team live in the chat, and then they did have the software was taking the paddle and auction and raising that. And so they could bring up on the website, they could have messages about how their fundraising is going and stuff like that. So it's like a video.
They ran their paddle and their live auction pre-recorded?
With the video running pre-recorded. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's all on one page. And then you could click a new page to have them kind of side by side.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I do think having a live auctioneer is kind of a bit more fun energy. And so if you have the budget to do it, I would say that is a lot more fun, especially because they can even call out names of who's donating, or it is more fun.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think you've given a lot of really great tips. Before we wrap up, I do want to touch on if somebody's never hired a production team before or even taken that next step, what kinds of things might they either want to be prepped before they go to hire a video production team, or want to make sure they ask questions about that they may not, think about, the terminology that we all use within our own industries that they might not know what a run of show is, or, some of the questions around how many videos do you want? How long do you want them to be? Which are all going to kind of go into the cost of a production company. What might be some of the things they might want to think about before they start to interview companies and figure out how they're going to move forward in that process?
So that's a great question. First, I would qualify the production company that you're working with. And to do that, I would ask them to share a sample of a show they've done and walk you through what they did on those shows. That'll help you understand what their role was and their experience, and if it's a good match, if they can handle all the aspects you want them to handle. It also will give you a lot of information on how a show is run. And then I would say to be able to bid it, they will likely need a run of show, at least a pretty good draft of one. And that'll help. We typically give a range just to wait and really make sure we know what we have involved in the show. And I would say, if they also encourage to work with you in the way you want to work with. So perhaps if you want to know what part you should take on and what part they'll take on. But I would say one part that probably people often overlook is just the sort of the management of the show, and really making sure you hit deadlines, somebody to always be able to communicate with, to know where things are at, having a shared folder. So, so potentially check their reference and whatnot, but just sort of making sure, because it is a deadline, just really making sure that they're going to hit those, that they like making schedules and hitting those dates.
Well, like you alluded to earlier, 4 months roughly being able to plan is only going to allow you to have the best quality possible. So the more time you give it, the better quality you're going to have. I mean, you can rush everything all day, but that's when errors happen and you don't end up with something that you want to use over and over again. Right. And so you don't want to invest in that money if it can't be repurposed.
Yeah. It is important to, especially if it's a fundraising event, to do it right. So,
I agree with that.
If anyone has questions, we're happy to chat and help guide them along. So.
Well, what are, as we wrap this up, what are the things that maybe, or a last minute kind of touch of wisdom as people are maybe trying to navigate into going into more video and feeling overwhelmed? What would your advice be about getting them to just get going and just get started?
Yeah, I would say I love brainstorms. And so just take a piece of paper and write out all ideas of what type of show you want it to be. And then all of the things that you could include in it. So it's kind of, I get excited about the fact that there's more opportunity in the sense of, you can have people from any location. Certainly getting a few other colleagues around to brainstorm is also really fun, to see what connections they have for who you want in your show. I would say that would be a good start. And don't get too caught up in searching for your technology, because that can be overwhelming. And then talk to a few other production companies that run live stream. Or, if you have somebody who runs your event, that can be a great start as well. And so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Michelle, if people want to learn more about you and Wahoo Films, how do they find you guys?
Yeah, it's Wahoo. It's wahhoofilms.com. And you can contact us there, or our office is 541-585-3456. And we love working with nonprofits. We do all over the US. And what's really nice about having it being online is you can work with anyone anywhere. We also support students. So we have a really experienced crew that also works with some students to get them further along in their skill set. And so we really try to give back to the community as well. And we also have our own nonprofit, sort of discount rates and gifts we give out as well. So yeah, so it's full circle.
That's so great. I love it. You practice what you preach so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Michelle. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Big thanks to Michelle again. If you want to check out all the links that she shared, you can head on over to thefirstclick.net/podcast. Check out the show notes. There's also a link there so you can grab your free spot in the online fundraising virtual summit, where Michelle will also be a speaker. But I thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll head on over to wherever you listen and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We come to you every single Tuesday. And if you happen to be on Apple Podcasts, make sure you leave us a little review so that more people can find us and we can continue to support more nonprofits in growing and reaching their missions and supporting their communities. For now, I'll see you in the next one.